April 16, 1947. The sun had barely risen above the Gulf Coast. Children were getting ready for school. Dock workers were beginning another ordinary morning. Mothers prepared breakfast. Fishermen watched the calm waters. And somewhere in the harbor, a fire had started. At first, it looked harmless. A little smoke, a few flames. Nothing that couldn't be handled. But hidden inside a French cargo ship sat more than 2,000 tons of a chemical so powerful that within minutes it would unleash one of the largest non-nuclear explosions in human history. An explosion so violent that people 40 miles away thought the world was ending. An explosion that ripped an entire city apart. An explosion that launched steel anchors weighing several tons through the sky like missiles. An explosion that killed firefighters before they even knew they were in danger. And an explosion so devastating that decades later, survivors could still hear the screams. This is not a story from a battlefield. This is not a story from World War II. This happened in a quiet American port city on an ordinary Wednesday morning. And by sunset, Texas City would become a burning nightmare. This is the true story of the Texas City disaster. The Second World War had ended less than 2 years earlier. Across America, people were trying to rebuild their lives. After years of rationing, fear, and sacrifice, there was finally hope. Factories that once produced weapons were shifting back to civilian production. Families looked toward the future. The economy was growing. And along the Gulf Coast of Texas, one city stood at the center of this new industrial boom. Texas City. Located about 40 miles southeast of Houston, Texas City had transformed itself into one of the nation's busiest industrial ports. Oil refineries stretched across the horizon. Chemical plants hummed day and night. Massive ships arrived from around the world, carrying cargo essential to rebuilding nations devastated by war. The city was proud of its workers, proud of its industries, proud of its future. Few could imagine that this very prosperity was quietly creating the conditions for catastrophe. The harbor was the city's heartbeat. Every day, ships loaded and unloaded countless tons of materials, fuel, machinery, chemicals, agricultural products. Everything moved through the docks. Among these shipments was a product considered valuable and relatively safe: ammonium nitrate, a fertilizer used to help grow food. After the war, much of the world faced food shortages. Countries desperately needed fertilizer to restore agriculture. Ammonium nitrate became one of the most important products being transported across oceans. But there was a deadly secret. Under certain conditions, ammonium nitrate could become an explosive force of unimaginable power. That lesson had already been learned elsewhere. Yet many workers handling it in Texas City had little understanding of the danger. To them, it was fertilizer. Just another cargo. Just another shipment. Just another day. Or so they thought. Docked at Pier O was a French cargo vessel called the SS Grand Camp. The ship had once served during World War II. Now it carried something different. Its cargo hold contained approximately 2,300 tons of ammonium nitrate packed in paper sacks. The shipment was destined for Europe. The world needed food. The fertilizer was desperately needed. Time was money. Schedules had to be met. Ships had to move. No one wanted delays. No one wanted complications. But beneath the deck of the Grand Camp, conditions were becoming increasingly dangerous. The fertilizer had been stored tightly together. Temperatures inside the cargo hold were rising. Then came the fire. Nobody knows exactly how it started. Some investigators believed a discarded cigarette may have ignited cargo. Others pointed to different possibilities. The exact cause remains uncertain. What is certain is that shortly after 8 a.m., smoke was noticed coming from hold number 4. At first, nobody panicked. Small shipboard fires were not unheard of. Crew members immediately attempted to extinguish the flames, but what happened next would prove fatal. Rather than flooding the hold with water, the captain reportedly ordered steam to be pumped inside. The reasoning seemed practical. Water could damage valuable cargo. Steam might smother the flames without ruining the fertilizer. Unfortunately, the fire was already feeding itself. Deep inside the hold, temperatures continued to rise. The ammonium nitrate was becoming increasingly unstable. Onshore, people gathered to watch. Curiosity drew them closer. Workers, families, children. Smoke poured upward in thick columns. Some people even thought the sight looked beautiful. Photographers arrived. The bright orange smoke rising into the blue Texas sky created a strange spectacle. No one understood they were watching the final moments before disaster. The final moments before hell arrived. The morning air felt warm. The Gulf breeze drifted across the harbor. Around the city, daily life continued. School classes had begun. Businesses opened their doors. Factory workers reported for duty. Meanwhile, firefighters rushed toward the Grand Camp. They were doing exactly what firefighters are trained to do: protect lives, protect property, run toward danger. Not away from it. The Texas City Fire Department responded quickly. Many of the men who climbed onto the dock that morning were experienced professionals. Some were veterans. Some were fathers. Some had survived war. None of them knew they were standing beside a bomb. As smoke intensified, more spectators gathered. People stood along the waterfront. Others watched from nearby buildings. Some even brought cameras. The scene seemed under control, until suddenly, the color of the smoke changed. Witnesses later described seeing bright yellow and orange smoke pouring from the vessel. It was an ominous sign. The cargo hold was reaching extreme temperatures. Inside the ship, pressure was building. Every second increased the danger. Every second brought the city closer to catastrophe. Then came 9:12 a.m., a moment frozen forever in history. For a brief instant, there was silence. Then, the world exploded. The blast was so powerful that witnesses described a blinding flash brighter than the sun. A gigantic fireball erupted into the sky. The Grand Camp simply disappeared. One moment it existed. The next moment it was gone. The explosion generated a shockwave that tore across Texas City with unimaginable force. Buildings collapsed instantly. Windows shattered miles away. People were thrown through the air. The ground itself seemed to jump. The blast registered on seismographs hundreds of miles away. The force was equivalent to several thousand tons of TNT, one of the largest explosions the world had ever witnessed outside of warfare. The ship's 2-ton anchor was launched nearly 2 miles. Steel fragments rained from the sky. Burning debris crashed into homes, businesses, and industrial facilities. Entire sections of the harbor vanished. Most of the firefighters standing near the ship were killed instantly. Many were never identified. Families waiting for them at home would never see them again. But the horror was only beginning. The first seconds after the blast felt unreal. Across Texas City, thousands of survivors struggled to understand what had just happened. Many believed an atomic bomb had detonated. The memory of Hiroshima and Nagasaki was still fresh in people's minds. For a terrifying moment, some thought America itself had come under attack. A thick curtain of dust swallowed entire neighborhoods. Daylight vanished. Streets disappeared beneath clouds of debris. People staggered through the darkness, bleeding and disoriented. Some could not hear. Others could not see. Many had no idea where they were. The explosion had ruptured eardrums, shattered skulls, and thrown people across rooms, sidewalks, and factory floors. Inside schools, terrified children screamed for their teachers. Desks had overturned. Windows had exploded inward. Glass fragments lay scattered everywhere. Teachers fought to keep panicked students calm while checking for injuries. In homes throughout the city, mothers searched desperately for their children. Parents called out names that were swallowed by the roar of fires now spreading in every direction. At the harbor, the devastation was beyond comprehension. The docks had been transformed into a wasteland of twisted steel and burning wreckage. Railroad cars had been tossed aside like toys. Cargo cranes lay crumpled on the ground. Sections of buildings simply no longer existed. Where men had been working minutes earlier, there were only smoking ruins. The heat was unbearable. Fires erupted across refineries, warehouses, and industrial facilities. Massive storage tanks burst open. Oil spilled onto the ground and ignited. Flames raced through pipelines. Black smoke climbed thousands of feet into the sky. The city had become an inferno, and still, survivors rushed toward the destruction. Doctors, nurses, police officers, factory workers, ordinary citizens. Without hesitation, many began searching for the injured. Again and again, people entered collapsing structures to pull strangers from the rubble. Everywhere there were cries for help. Some voices were faint. Others were desperate screams. Many rescuers followed the sounds through mountains of debris. They dug with bare hands when tools were unavailable. Broken fingernails and bloodied fingers became common sights. The need to save lives outweighed everything else. One survivor later recalled hearing people trapped beneath wreckage calling for their families. Some called for their mothers. Others prayed. Many begged rescuers not to leave them behind. For those trapped, time felt endless. For rescuers, there was never enough time. As emergency crews struggled to organize, hospitals faced an overwhelming nightmare. Within minutes, the injured began arriving. Then, hundreds more followed. The wounded filled hallways. Waiting rooms overflowed. Patients were placed on floors. Tables became operating stations. Medical staff worked without rest. Without enough supplies. Without enough blood. Without enough hands. Doctors performed emergency surgeries, while new casualties continued arriving by truck, car, and ambulance. Some nurses had tears in their eyes as they treated victims. Many were caring for neighbors, friends, and relatives. In some cases, medical workers did not yet know that members of their own families had been killed. Outside the hospitals, crowds gathered searching for loved ones. Names were shouted repeatedly. Lists of survivors were checked and rechecked. Hope and despair mixed together in every conversation. For many families, uncertainty became its own form of torture. Yet even as the city struggled to comprehend the scale of the disaster, another danger was emerging. Few people realized that the harbor still contained enormous quantities of hazardous cargo. The initial explosion had triggered a chain reaction throughout the port. Burning debris had landed on nearby vessels. Among them was another ship carrying ammonium nitrate, the SS High Flyer. The vessel had become engulfed in growing fires. As flames spread aboard the ship, officials faced a terrifying possibility. Another explosion. Some crews attempted to move the vessel away from the docks. Others tried desperately to control the fire. But conditions were rapidly deteriorating. The heat continued rising. The danger continued growing. And all around them, exhausted rescuers remained focused on saving survivors from the first catastrophe. Hours passed. The city burned. Smoke covered the horizon. Thousands of people wandered through the devastation, searching for missing relatives. Many spent the day moving from hospital to hospital. Others searched shelters, churches, and emergency aid stations. Every rumor created hope. Every unanswered question created fear. Then, long after many believed the worst was over, disaster struck again. Late that night, the High Flyer exploded. The second detonation tore through the already shattered city. Buildings that had survived the morning blast collapsed. Fires intensified. New casualties were added to an already staggering toll. For exhausted survivors, the second explosion felt like a cruel nightmare refusing to end. The ground shook once more. Windows shattered once more. Fear returned with full force. People ran. People screamed. People wondered if there would be a third explosion. Or a fourth. Or if Texas City itself was about to disappear completely. As darkness settled over the Gulf Coast, flames illuminated the night sky. The harbor glowed red. Smoke drifted for miles. The air smelled of chemicals, burning oil, and death. Rescue workers continued searching under floodlights. Some had been working for more than 12 hours. Many refused to stop. Not while voices could still be heard beneath the rubble. Not while someone might still be alive. Not while families were still waiting for answers. The city that had awakened to an ordinary spring morning now resembled a battlefield. And before the sun rose again, countless lives would be changed forever. When dawn broke over Texas City the following morning, the fires were still burning. Smoke continued to drift across the harbor. Entire sections of the city remained unrecognizable. But amid the devastation, stories began to emerge. Stories of survival. Stories of courage. Stories that revealed the extraordinary strength of ordinary people. For many survivors, the disaster would forever divide their lives into two parts: before the explosion and after it. One woman later recalled being thrown violently across her home when the blast struck. One moment she had been carrying out the routine tasks of an ordinary morning. The next, she found herself buried beneath broken furniture, shattered glass, and pieces of her own house. For several terrifying minutes, she could not move. Dust filled her lungs. The air was thick with the smell of smoke. Around her, she could hear screams coming from neighboring homes. Some voices were close. Others sounded distant. Many suddenly went silent. When rescuers finally reached her, she learned that entire blocks around her neighborhood had been devastated. Friends she had spoken to only hours earlier were gone. People she expected to see the next day would never return. Throughout the city, similar stories unfolded. Families became separated in an instant. Parents searched desperately for children. Children searched desperately for parents. Some wandered through emergency shelters carrying photographs. Others carried only names and hope. Hospitals became places of both reunion and heartbreak. For some families, the injured were eventually found alive. For others, the search ended in grief. One father spent nearly 2 days moving between hospitals, shelters, and temporary morgues, looking for his wife and daughter. Every location offered the possibility of relief. Every unanswered question brought fresh fear. When he finally located them, one was recovering from serious injuries. The other had not survived. Years later, he would still remember the moment he received the news, not because of what was said, but because of the silence that followed, a silence that never truly left him. Meanwhile, rescue workers continued operating under impossible conditions. Many had already lost friends, co-workers, and family members. Yet they remained at the disaster site, digging, searching, listening, hoping. Among the most heartbreaking losses were the firefighters who had answered the initial emergency call. Entire generations of the Texas City Fire Department had been wiped out in seconds. Many of the men who rushed toward the burning ship never had the opportunity to escape. Some left behind wives. Others left behind young children. In countless homes across the city, families waited through the night, believing their loved ones were still helping others. Only later would they learn the terrible truth. The loss devastated the community. These were not distant heroes. They were neighbors, friends, fathers, men known by name throughout the city. Their sacrifice became one of the defining tragedies of the disaster. Yet heroism was not limited to firefighters. Across Texas City, ordinary citizens repeatedly risked their lives to save others. One refinery worker spent hours helping pull injured people from collapsed buildings, despite suffering serious wounds himself. Witnesses later recalled seeing blood soaking through his clothing as he continued carrying victims to safety. Another survivor repeatedly entered a burning structure, searching for trapped co-workers. Each trip could have been his last. Still, he returned, again and again, because he knew someone might still be alive. Doctors and nurses performed acts of endurance that bordered on the unbelievable. Many worked continuously for more than 24 hours. Some never left their stations. Food became an afterthought. Sleep became impossible. The injured simply kept arriving. Burn victims, crush injuries, severe lacerations. People blinded by shattered glass. People suffering from shock. People searching desperately for missing family members, even while receiving treatment themselves. Medical personnel faced decisions no one ever wants to make. Who needed surgery first? Who could wait? Who might not survive regardless of treatment? Every choice carried enormous weight. Every decision meant the difference between life and death. And still they kept working. Outside the city, news of the catastrophe spread rapidly across the nation. Reporters arrived. Military personnel arrived. Relief organizations arrived. Volunteers arrived from neighboring communities. Many came simply because they wanted to help. Some brought food. Some brought medical supplies. Others brought equipment for rescue operations. What they encountered was almost beyond belief. Witnesses described entire neighborhoods flattened, vehicles crushed beyond recognition, industrial facilities transformed into twisted skeletons of steel. The harbor itself looked like a war zone. Many veterans who had recently returned from World War II compared the destruction to combat. Some said it was worse, because this devastation had struck without warning, because the victims had been civilians, because no one had expected death to arrive on an ordinary Wednesday morning. As recovery efforts continued, another painful reality emerged. Many victims could not immediately be identified. The force of the explosions had been so immense that traditional methods of identification became difficult or impossible. Families waited anxiously for information. Days turned into weeks. For some, closure came slowly. For others, it never came completely. Yet even amid overwhelming loss, life continued. Children who survived eventually returned to school. Businesses slowly reopened. Families attempted to rebuild. But the emotional wounds remained. Survivors often described recurring nightmares. Many startled at loud noises. Some avoided the harbor for the rest of their lives. Others could never forget the sound of the explosion. A sound so powerful, so unnatural, so terrifying, that decades later, they could still hear it in their memories. For those who lived through Texas City, survival was not simply about escaping death. It was about learning how to live with what they had witnessed, how to move forward after seeing friends disappear in an instant, how to rebuild after losing everything, how to find hope in a place where hope had seemed impossible. And as rescue operations gradually gave way to recovery efforts, the nation began asking a difficult question. How could a disaster of this magnitude have happened? And could it ever happen again? In the days that followed, Texas City became a place of mourning. The fires were gradually extinguished. The smoke began to clear. The noise of rescue operations slowly faded. But what remained was a reality almost too painful to comprehend. An entire community had been shattered. Every street seemed to carry a memory of loss. Every neighborhood had a story of grief. Every family knew someone who had not come home. As officials worked to understand the scale of the disaster, the numbers continued to rise. Bodies were discovered beneath collapsed buildings. Victims were recovered from the harbor. Others were found in places no one expected. The tremendous force of the explosions had scattered debris and people across vast distances. The final death toll would exceed 500 lives. Thousands more were injured. Many historians believe the true number of fatalities may never be known with complete certainty. Some victims simply vanished in the violence of the blast. Others were never positively identified. Behind every number was a human story. A father who kissed his children goodbye that morning. A young worker starting a promising career. A firefighter answering a routine emergency call. A mother planning dinner for her family. Lives interrupted forever. And for the families left behind, the pain was only beginning. Across the city, funerals became a constant part of daily life. Church bells rang repeatedly. Cemeteries filled with mourners. Rows of fresh graves appeared, where only days earlier there had been empty ground. Many funerals were attended by hundreds of people. Others were marked by heartbreaking silence. Some families had no remains to bury. Some had only fragments of what had once been their loved ones. The emotional weight was almost unbearable. One survivor later described the city as feeling haunted, not by ghosts, but by absence, by the empty chairs at dinner tables, the unopened bedroom doors, the familiar faces that would never again be seen walking down the street. Meanwhile, investigators began searching for answers. What exactly had gone wrong? How had a shipment intended to help feed a recovering world turned into one of the deadliest industrial disasters in American history? Experts examined wreckage. Witnesses were interviewed. Technical reports were compiled. Piece by piece, a picture began to emerge. The central factor was ammonium nitrate, the same substance that had fueled the catastrophic explosions. Although widely used as fertilizer, ammonium nitrate could become dangerously unstable when exposed to intense heat and certain conditions. Investigators focused on the fire aboard the Grand Camp. They examined storage methods, loading procedures, emergency responses, every decision made during the critical hours before the explosion. Yet despite extensive investigations, some questions remained unanswered. No one could say with absolute certainty how the initial fire started. No single explanation could erase the tragedy. For many families, understanding the cause offered little comfort. Nothing could bring back the people they had lost. Still, the investigations revealed important lessons. Lessons that would eventually influence safety standards around the world. But before those changes could take shape, another battle began. A battle fought not with fire and explosions, but in courtrooms. Families of victims sought accountability. They wanted answers. They wanted justice. They wanted recognition that what had happened should never have occurred. Thousands of claims were filed against the United States government. At the center of these legal challenges was the argument that federal agencies had played a role in the production, handling, and distribution of the ammonium nitrate cargo. The lawsuits became one of the largest legal actions of their time. For years, the cases moved through the courts. Survivors testified. Families shared their stories. Lawyers debated responsibility. The proceedings attracted national attention. Eventually, the courts ruled that the government could not be held liable under the specific circumstances of the case. For many survivors, the decision was deeply disappointing. The legal battle ended, but emotional closure remained elusive. Beyond the human tragedy, the economic damage was staggering. Large portions of the port had been destroyed. Industrial facilities suffered enormous losses. Warehouses, rail infrastructure, and businesses had been reduced to rubble. Property damage reached hundreds of millions of dollars in modern value. Yet despite everything, Texas City refused to disappear. Rebuilding began almost immediately. Workers cleared debris. Businesses repaired facilities. Families reconstructed homes. The process was slow, painful, exhausting, but determination proved stronger than despair. In many ways, rebuilding became an act of defiance, a declaration that tragedy would not have the final word. Still, recovery was not measured only in bricks and steel. The deeper scars were invisible. Children who survived grew up carrying memories of shattered windows and falling buildings. Parents carried memories of desperate searches through hospitals and shelters. Rescue workers carried memories of voices beneath rubble. Many survivors spoke little about the disaster for years. Some found the memories too painful. Others feared reopening wounds that had never fully healed. Yet the disaster remained with them, a permanent part of who they were. A sound, a smell, a flash of light. Sometimes that was all it took to transport them back to April 16, 1947. Back to the moment when an ordinary morning became a nightmare. As Texas City slowly rebuilt itself, one truth became increasingly clear. The disaster was not merely a local tragedy. It was a warning. A warning written in fire. A warning written in loss. A warning the entire world needed to hear. And the lessons learned from that terrible day would go on to change industrial safety forever. Long after the fires were extinguished, long after the wreckage was cleared, long after the headlines faded from newspapers, the Texas City disaster continued to speak, not through words, but through lessons written in sacrifice. The catastrophe of April 1947 forced industries, governments, and safety experts to confront an uncomfortable truth. Modern progress carried hidden dangers. The same chemicals that helped feed millions of people could also destroy entire communities if handled improperly. For years, industrial growth had moved at a breathtaking pace. Factories expanded. Ports became busier. Cargo ships carried increasingly larger quantities of hazardous materials. The world was rebuilding after war, and speed often took priority over caution. Texas City changed that conversation. In the months and years that followed, safety experts studied every aspect of the disaster. They analyzed cargo handling procedures, storage methods, firefighting practices, emergency response systems, communication failures, and the behavior of ammonium nitrate under extreme conditions. The findings would influence industrial safety for generations. Around the world, governments and industries began re-examining how dangerous materials were transported and stored. New regulations emerged. Safety standards became stricter. Training programs expanded. Warning systems improved. The goal was simple: never allow another community to experience what Texas City had endured. Yet history has shown that lessons learned are not always lessons remembered. Decades later, other ammonium nitrate disasters would occur in different parts of the world. Each tragedy served as a painful reminder that dangerous materials demand constant respect. Rules alone are not enough. Vigilance matters. Preparation matters. Knowledge matters. Because when complacency takes hold, history has a way of repeating itself. For Texas City itself, remembrance became part of the community's identity. The city rebuilt. Businesses reopened. Ships returned to the harbor. New generations grew up in neighborhoods once scarred by destruction. Life moved forward. But the memory of April 16 never disappeared. Memorials were established. Ceremonies were held. Names were preserved. Families passed stories from one generation to the next. Not because they wanted to relive the pain, but because they feared what might happen if the memory faded. Among the most honored victims were the firefighters, the men who answered a call for help without knowing they were walking into one of the deadliest firefighting disasters in American history. Their sacrifice became a symbol of courage. They had no opportunity to retreat, no chance to escape. Yet they responded exactly as they had been trained to do. They ran toward danger to protect others, and they paid the ultimate price. Their legacy remains woven into the history of Texas City. But perhaps the most enduring legacy belongs to the survivors, the men, women, and children who somehow endured the unimaginable, those who climbed from rubble, those who searched for loved ones, those who rebuilt homes, businesses, and lives from ashes. Their resilience became the foundation upon which the city recovered. Many spent decades sharing their experiences with historians, journalists, and younger generations. Not for recognition, not for sympathy, but because they understood something important. Memory can save lives. When people remember the consequences of negligence, they become more careful. When communities remember the cost of complacency, they become more prepared. When nations remember tragedies, they gain the opportunity to prevent future ones. That is why the Texas City disaster matters even today. Not merely because it was one of the deadliest industrial accidents in American history, not merely because of the scale of destruction, but because it revealed how quickly ordinary life can be transformed by a chain of seemingly small decisions. A fire, a delay, a misunderstanding, a lack of awareness. Individually, each may appear insignificant. Together, they can change history. And perhaps that is the most haunting lesson of all. Disasters are rarely born in a single moment. More often, they are built gradually, quietly, invisible until it is too late. The people of Texas City learned that lesson through unimaginable loss. The responsibility of future generations is to learn it through memory instead. Because the greatest tribute to those who died is not simply remembering their names. It is remembering why they died. It is recognizing the warning they left behind. And it is ensuring that their sacrifice continues to protect lives long after the echoes of the explosion have faded. The harbor looks different today. The city looks different today. The world looks different today. Yet, beneath the modern skyline and busy shipping channels lies a story that still matters. A story of tragedy. A story of courage. A story of human resilience in the face of overwhelming devastation. A story that reminds us that progress without safety comes at a terrible cost. And a story that continues to warn the world nearly 8 decades later. Imagine standing on the Texas City waterfront on the evening of April 15, 1947. The harbor is calm. Ships rest quietly against the docks. Workers finish their shifts. Children laugh in the distance. Families gather around dinner tables. The future seems certain. Tomorrow will be another ordinary day, but history knows something they do not. History knows that before the next sunset, hundreds of those people will be gone. Entire families will be changed forever. A city will be scarred for generations. And one ordinary morning will become one of the darkest days in American history. That is what makes the Texas City disaster so haunting. There was no invading army, no declaration of war, no warning sirens echoing across the city. Life simply unfolded as it always had, until it didn't. In a matter of seconds, dreams were interrupted. Promises were broken. Futures disappeared. And yet, when we look back at Texas City, the story is not defined solely by destruction. It is defined by people. The firefighters who answered a call they knew could be dangerous, but answered it anyway. The nurses who worked until exhaustion overtook them. The fathers who searched endlessly for their families. The mothers who protected their children in the middle of chaos. The strangers who became heroes when circumstances demanded courage. The survivors who carried painful memories for the rest of their lives and still found the strength to rebuild. Because in every great tragedy, there are two stories. The story of what was lost and the story of what endured. Texas City lost homes. It lost businesses. It lost friends, neighbors, co-workers, parents, and children. But it did not lose its humanity. When the city lay broken, people reached for one another. When hope seemed impossible, people created it. When darkness covered the harbor, ordinary men and women became extraordinary through acts of compassion and sacrifice. Perhaps that is why the disaster continues to resonate nearly 80 years later. Not because of the size of the explosion, not because of the destruction, but because it revealed both the fragility and the strength of human life. It showed how quickly everything can change, and how powerful people can be when faced with unimaginable hardship. Today, visitors can stand in Texas City and see a thriving community. Ships still move through the harbor. Businesses still operate. Families still build their lives there. To many, it may seem like just another coastal city, but beneath that ordinary appearance lies an extraordinary story. A story written in courage. A story written in grief. A story written in resilience. And if you listen closely enough, you can almost hear its echoes. The distant sound of sirens rushing toward danger. The voices of rescuers searching through the rubble. The prayers whispered by survivors. The determination of a city refusing to surrender. The Texas City disaster reminds us that history is not merely a collection of dates and facts. History is people. People who loved. People who dreamed. People who suffered. People who endured. And as long as their stories are remembered, they are never truly gone. Their lives become lessons. Their sacrifices become warnings. Their courage becomes inspiration. And their memories continue to shape the future. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of the most devastating industrial disasters ever recorded. If this story moved you, if it taught you something new, and if you believe these forgotten human stories deserve to be remembered, please support our mission. Subscribe to Real Story Network, because behind every disaster, every tragedy, and every historical event, there are real people whose voices deserve to be heard. And here on Real Story Network, we make sure those voices are never forgotten. Until next time, remember the past, honor the victims, learn the lessons, and keep their stories alive.